Alright, let's go at the bottom of the barrel, shall we? Let's talk about Commander Masters and pricing and how the set looks so far. I didn't really talk about Commander Masters much last week because the set kind of frustrates me and it bores me a little bit. But I've had a lot of questions asked of me by patrons and viewers and comments and things on Twitter and stuff, so I guess I should talk about the set. It's just the current news cycle, right? Just to be clear, it's £300 for a draft booster box, it's £400 for a set booster box, and currently collector booster boxes are available, which is 4 collector boosters in the UK for £200-ish, just over actually from most places, meaning that a collector booster of this set is £50. There are more rares per pack, and there's 20 cards per pack, and there's all these things that people will try and justify the price for, especially if they want to be countercultural in a way. We find ourselves in a really weird situation where there's a lot of people that are frustrated with a lot of things that Wizards do all the time. There's a lot of doom and gloom and negativity around Magic. But there's a weirdness that we have with social media, at least, where these voices are a loud chorus, bitching and moaning. Obviously, they only represent more the entrenched players of Magic. A lot of the kitchen table players and casual players who go to your local store don't have a fucking clue what's going on. But anyway, they're all shouting about how this is too expensive or how this or that. And then we have a lot of social media kickback from creators and ambassadors and other people, there's dust in the air, other people who are looking to be like, well, actually, it's not that bad. Double Masters was just as bad, right? But like, if someone were to punch me in the dick, and then they punch me in the dick 6 months later to a year later, maybe 2 years later, just because they punched me in the dick before doesn't mean they can punch me in the dick again. Stop punching me in the dick. This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com. Use the code in the description below or the code Kenobi at checkout to get 5% off your order and help support the show. You can pick up Commander Master stuff from Cool Stuff Inc., or you can pre-order the upcoming sets as well. Loads and loads of Magic and trading card stuff over there. So I'm going to talk about the set and what they've revealed so far, and also just my general feelings on it. I don't think the price tag is justified by it being a Master set, and they can't really show me anything during preview season that makes the price justifiable. I want to be abundantly fucking clear about that. The cost of this set is too high, no matter what. There is no Magic cards they can print in this that would justify the price, because I come from a position where Magic should never be this expensive. The closest you could get, if we were really to move with exaggerations and hyperbole, is if they printed like reserve list staples in there. If there's Ancient Tombs, City of Traitors, Ancient Tombs on the reserve list, City of Traitors, original Jewel Lands, stuff like that. But even then, I don't think this is justifiable. The Magic 30 $1,000 booster pack is probably a much better product if it's 1/5 of its price, if it was $200. But I would still be criticizing it because it's too much. I don't think trading cards should be this expensive. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think that like collectible pieces and stuff floating around should be able to be expensive. So for example, Secret Lairs, Secret Lair Ultimate Editions, even though I think they were a bit of a joke, from the vaults, they did a limited print run of them, they become super collectible, I'm fine with it. Limited print run stuff that is just alternate arts and chase versions of that. Serialized cards too, if they pick up money in the secondary market, all that stuff is fine. The point I'm getting at is that the game pieces themselves should be affordable. And by that I mean you should be able to draft this for less than 40 English pounds, which you might be able to if your local game store's feeling fucking generous, and you should be able to buy the pieces for your deck for a much lower cost than they currently are. Cards like Dockside Extort should never hold a $40 price tag, but they will if they're only reprinted at Mythic in sets that cost you 2 or 3 times the price of a normal booster. That's where my issue is. Nothing will ever justify this price. The other thing that really bugs me about all this and why I've been like really neg about it is that Lord of the Rings was also premium priced, and I don't feel like it should have been. The assumption is that Wizards of the Coast had to pay some sort of licensing fee for the use of the Lord of the Rings intellectual property from Middle-earth Enterprises, and thus the consumer, the end user, you and I, dear reader, we are the ones who had to pay that extra surcharge. And the set was great, full of interesting and fun cards. It was super flavorful. The draft environment was fun as well. Drafted like 5 or 6 times now. That's about as much as I would draft back in the day. So they got me back into limited. But the fact that those drafts were more expensive than typical draft because the packs were dearer bugged the shit out of me. And seeing the game have $50 booster packs with collector boosters, or I think it was £40 was how much they were going for at their peak, is embarrassing because other card games look to us and think we're just this rich kid's whale net now, as opposed to being, you know, one of the classically best card games ever. But a minor price uptick for a license or something is kind of excusable in a sense that, well, it's for the license, right? I can see that being the norm going forward and something we'll kind of have to put up with. But for that to happen, to then get this, which is an even higher premium price product, like back-to-back premium priced, is very frustrating. Like, the part of the world that I live in isn't full of deeply entrenched players who are willing to play Magic in all its forms. It's a lot of Commander players who will just avoid playing any Limited, even Commander Limited, if it's £40 a pop. So is the set stacked? Well, yes and no. I don't think you're ever going to make your EV back on a box of this, like some people seem to believe they always will on Master sets, because there's a load of duds. For every Titan or Avacyn that you open, by Titan I mean Eldrazi Titans, for every Eldrazi Titan and Avacyn that you open, you'll be able to open a Zeltapa or a fucking Talrand. On a Master set, they might skew slightly towards the higher end of the price tags, so more Eldrazi Titans than there are Talrands, but there'll still be duds you can hit in your £5 or £10 pack. Sorry, I did the math. The 12 boosts are £12.50. See, in my head, I'm like, they can't be that high. They've got to be £12.50 if we divide a box at 300 quid, just under, by 24. So sure, there's a load of cards that are at the moment quite expensive, but there's also cards here that will dip, and that's a good thing. The Portal 3 Kingdoms cards, and to a lesser extent Archfiend of Despair, are examples of cards that are really expensive simply because their supply is so restricted. Portal 3 Kingdoms is hardly any of this shit out there, and with Battle Bond it was also a similar scenario, although not to the same severity. So once these cards get reprinted, we're going to have what I call an Imperial Recruiter situation. The old frames, especially for the Portal 3 Kingdom ones, will retain some sort of value. Imperial Recruiter at the moment is over $100 for an original Portal 3 Kingdoms one, but you can get a current border one or even a showcase frame one for sub $10. And that's not a criticism, this is a positive. In some ways it's bad, because you can buy a $12.50 booster, open a card, and it'll be less than the value you pay for the back, which is something you need to expect when you're buying £12.50 randomised loot boxes. It's not great. But overall, bringing down the price of cards is fantastic. And the absolute ideal Magic is there's a £100 chase variant for people to aspire to get if they want to collect expensive cards, but there's also a £5 or £10 version of a card for you to play with. That is the ideal scenario for Magic the Gathering. Problem lies, comment section, with the fact that then the cost of the entry to do the opening of these reprints is so high, and I fear it will get higher and higher as people keep buying and buying. At some point, the goodwill of the community has to be damaged enough that people will stop buying, and I really hope that happens soon, so we can see some sort of stabilization or reduction in price of Magic, and not just double premium sets every summer. That would suck. Then there's been upshifts in rarity. First of all, Demonic Tutor was an uncommon originally, so print it at that, you fucking cowards. Smothering Tide was upshifted to Mythic from Rare. It was only Rare literally last year, but here we are because it's apparently good and limited. If you're not aware, the limited environment for this is Commander, so I get that it is good in Commander. I'm not arguing Smothering Tide isn't. I think the card's obnoxious. But the point I'm going to labour here is that the draft environment is £40 a draft. I think when your price is that high, at some point you've got to stop pretending that the draft environments for these things matter. And I'm saying that from the perspective of someone who plays on Magic the Gathering Online and drafts every Master set they make in Phantom, where you don't keep the cards. In Phantom, 3 or 4 times, multiple times on the stream too, because the draft environments of old Master sets have been really fun. Modern Masters 1, Modern Masters 3, and Ultimate Masters are some of my favourite draft environments of all time. They have this high power level, almost cube-like feel to them, and I think they're great. Commander Legends 2 as well, absolutely fantastic. I loved Battle of Baldur's Gate. Commander Legends 1 was too slow. So, and also playing Commander on Arena fucking kind of sucks, especially slower draft format versions. So whether or not I'll actually get to draft this, I don't know. And it's starting to feel like, does it fucking matter if the draft environment has a Smothering Tide that's rare? Is it really going to ruin anyone's enjoyment? Probably not, because you're paying your 40 quid, you're opening some nice cards, and who gives a fuck? The excuse about drafting is to allow them to then upshift stuff. So Extra Planar Lens, for example, is a card that was printed before Mythic Rares existed. They were first printed in Shards of Alara. So there's an argument that a lot of rares back in the day would have been Mythic by today's standards. But it gives them an excuse to upshift a load of stuff to keep them expensive in the secondary market. What that does is it keeps the reprint equity there in that card. Exsanguinate wasn't upshifted, which is an uncommon that has been worth as high as $10 at some point, so I expected it to be. That's nice, I guess. But a card like Extinguish All Hope was downshifted, a 6-mana Wrath, to give us more Wraths available in the format to make the draft environment work. So they are downshifting for the draft environment, but it never works out in the sense of making cards more affordable or available. So they are doing it for the limited environment in some capacities, but I don't believe the Mythic upshifts are justifiable as part of the forging of a limited environment, because no fucker's going to play it. And again, to labour the point, I wouldn't fucking care if the drafts were £15 to £20, not £40. The other thing that I noticed when looking through this set was that the vast majority of stuff in it is new. I guess a lot of it is reprints of stuff from the Commander sets going forward, so 2011 onwards, when the Precon started and other Commander products started. And it's interesting because a lot of the sets in the last year or two have been real nostalgia-based sets. You know, Dominaria Remastered, Double Masters. All of these sets were, Time Spiral Remastered, were really tugging on the heartstrings of the old nostalgic boomer. But this isn't boomer magic. This is a swath of new frame, post-8th edition or post-2011 cards being reprinted. Perhaps the artifact slot is the most commonly old stuff, Thran Dynamos, Sol Rings and such. But I just find that really interesting. That this is like Zoomer magic for people with 40-second attention spans. The newer, more power-crept stuff. And yes, I'm sarcastically referring to it as Zoomer magic. I guess you could argue I'm a Zoomer. I still fucking play the game, right? You can't say I'm a Zoomer. I'm definitely a boomer. But Commander Masters does look like a lot of modern or new magic. This is not your grandfather's card game. These medallions are another example of cards that are very scarce because they have hardly ever been reprinted. And I think if they were put into a non-premium set, they would crash in price. And big shout out to Ulamog's Crusher, a card with Annihilate 2 at common. That's going to upset some newer players who are not really keen to play against Annihilator in Commander. I know it's one of those mechanics that does upset people, but good inclusion for the draft environment, giving us a common payoff for the ramp strategies we will see in Commander Masters, whether that be ramp with Kodama's Reach or Thran Dynamo or whatever. This gives you a payoff for that at common, so you're not relying on opening the big chunky stuff at Rare or Mythic. But again, props to the limited design space is kind of dumb when the product's so fucking expensive. I also really like a lot of the special art versions of cards. I think the Sol Ring looks fantastic. And all of these like portrait art style versions of iconic characters in like an intimate pop art setting are really cool. I think the idea that we've got a load of like humanoids doing it, then we get the non-humanoids or borderline non-humanoids like Ulamog and Omnath. I think these are great. They're really sweet. But again, it's hard to be excited for them when I'm never going to get to see to open one because the set's too expensive. We also need a Rafik or a Sharoom in here so I can rebuild those decks and relive my former glories. Give me Portrait Sharoom or Portrait Rafik, please. I'll buy it from a secret lair if I have to. I've said this throughout my career on the internet of talking about card games, is that the Master sets in Magic the Gathering usually play and are a fun environment to both open packs and play in. The biggest downside is their cost, and there's no end in sight to that. There's no respite, there's no relaxation of that. We're just going upwards. We're just marginally more expensive than what Double Masters was. And the reason that bugs me so much and why I keep labouring the point is that we got back-to-back premium sets in a period where people are going into a cost of living crisis, and it kind of sucks. People are tightening their belt straps at the current time because things are more expensive than ever, and a lot of companies are going to stealth increase the cost or the price with which they will charge you for things when their operational costs haven't increased. Somewhere along the line, operational costs for Wizards of the Coast would have increased. For like shipping, for example, is one of the biggest culprits for increasing the cost of things worldwide over the last couple of years. But I don't think that that is what allows them to justify the ludicrously expensive price tags of this or Double Masters if we go back a couple of years. I guess what does justify it is that it will sell. And that's kind of the frustration with it in general for me, is that I really hope it doesn't sell. I really hope at some point Magic the Gathering fans and players and consumers and collectors all put their foot down and say, no, this is too much, we've gone too far. And we saw that with Magic 30. We saw that Magic 30 was the real yardstick for how far Wizards could go. And they threw it out there, out into the water, and we did not want to get anywhere fucking near it. So now they're back to the Double Masters like sort of style of pricing, and we'll probably see pushing further and further, but I hope people reject it. I really hope this set doesn't just fly off shelves, pre-orders are fulfilled, and people are cracking it left, right, and centre. In some ways, I wonder if its numbers will look minuscule by comparison to Lord of the Rings, where the price point wasn't as much of an issue and people outside the game were buying in. I don't think any of those people cracking packs on Whatnot to find the One Ring are cracking Commander Masters boosters, for example. So that's where I am with it. I'm absolutely lukewarm because I'll probably get to play almost zero of it. I might reluctantly buy one draft, but at that point I feel like I'm just feeding the machine that is people getting involved with it, so I probably won't. And I hate that idea. I hate the idea that I'm not going to get involved with the latest thing or a limited environment or a unique bespoke play environment for Magic because it's too expensive. I think that fucking sucks. I really wish that wasn't happening. I've been Vince, also PleasantKenobi. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.